AITA for refusing to let my brother bring his girlfriend to my wedding after she called me a broke bitch on social media. Okay, so here's the situation. I, 28F, am getting married to my fiancée, 31M, in a few months. The wedding has been in the works for a while, and we've spent months picking a venue, sending out invites, and sorting through all the details. It's going to be a fairly small wedding, about 80 guests, and we're keeping things simple but elegant. I've always had a close relationship with my family, especially my older brother, 30M. He's been a huge part of my life, and I've always been there for him when he needed help. But here's where things went sideways. My brother recently started dating this woman, Sally, 27F, and while she seemed nice at first, I've been having some issues with her lately. I try to give her the benefit of the doubt, but it's like every time I interact with her, I find myself more and more annoyed. A few weeks ago, I posted a photo on Facebook about the progress of the wedding planning, just a picture of me in the wedding dress at the shop. Sally commented on the photo, saying something like, "Wow, you're really going all out for a wedding that's going to end in divorce anyway." I was shocked, but I tried to let it slide because maybe it was just a random comment. However, a couple of days later, I noticed she had posted a story about me on her own social media. It was a screenshot of my dress photo with a caption that said, "How embarrassing. She's planning this huge, fancy wedding when she's literally a broke bitch who can't afford half of it." I feel bad for her fiancé. I don't even know why he's marrying her. Hope it lasts, but honestly it won't. I was beyond furious. I tried to ignore it, but after talking to a few people, I realized how widespread the post had become. My brother, who saw the post, didn't say anything to me directly, but he did like the post on Instagram. I felt completely betrayed. I confronted him about it, and he basically shrugged it off, saying he didn't think Sally meant it to be hurtful and that it was just her sense of humor. He even told me I was overreacting. I was done at that point. I decided I didn't want Sally anywhere near my wedding, so I told my brother that I was uninviting her. I explained why and said I didn't want someone who openly disrespects me and my fiancé at an event that's supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life. My brother was furious. He called me petty and dramatic and said I was being a control freak for not letting him bring his girlfriend. He said if Sally wasn't invited, he wouldn't come either. I tried to explain that I didn't want to start drama at my wedding, but he was adamant. He even told me I was being selfish because it's not like she's the only person in the world who thinks that way. He kept pushing, and after several days of arguing back and forth, he said if I didn't uninvite the broke bitch from the wedding, he would skip the event altogether. At this point, I felt stuck. I've been close to my brother my whole life, but I can't justify inviting someone who disrespects me like that, especially when I'm trying to celebrate my marriage. I've tried reaching out to him multiple times to calm things down, but he refuses to see it my way. He says I'm prioritizing a dumb wedding over family, and I'm just causing unnecessary drama. So, here's where I'm at now. My brother is still demanding I invite Sally, and he's threatening not to attend if she's not invited. I've told him he can either come without her or not come at all, but I'm not changing my mind about the guest list. I'm really torn here. I know family is important, but I also don't want someone who's openly called me names and tried to embarrass me at my own wedding. AITA for refusing to let my brother bring his girlfriend after she called me a broke bitch on social media. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. So, I, 30M, have a sister, Sarah, 33F, who has 2 kids, Alex, 6M, and Mia, 8F. I don't have kids of my own yet, but I do enjoy spending time with my niece and nephew when the occasion calls for it. I live in a small 2-bedroom apartment, which is pretty cramped for just me, so it's not like I have a ton of space. Anyway, last weekend, my sister asked if her kids could stay with me for a few days while she and her husband went on a quick trip out of town. At first, I was hesitant, but I agreed after some back and forth because I felt bad saying no, and she promised they'd be on their best behavior. I want to be clear. I don't mind spending time with my niece and nephew, but they're not always well-behaved, especially when they're out of their usual environment. I know my sister tries her best, but the kids are spoiled, loud, and constantly fighting over the smallest things. I didn't want to sound rude, so I agreed to take them in, but I made sure to lay down some ground rules beforehand. No screaming indoors. I don't have the patience for constant yelling, and it's a small apartment, so it gets really loud really quickly. No screaming indoors. I don't have the patience for constant yelling, and it's a small apartment, so it gets really loud really quickly. No jumping on the furniture. I have some nice furniture, and I don't want it wrecked. No jumping on the furniture. I have some nice furniture, and I don't want it wrecked. Bedtime is 9 p.m. I need some quiet time in the evening, and I don't want them staying up all night playing games or making noise. Bedtime is 9 p.m. I need some quiet time in the evening, and I don't want them staying up all night playing games or making noise. Clean up after themselves. I have a rule about not leaving toys or food lying around. It's a small space, and things get messy quickly. Clean up after themselves. I have a rule about not leaving toys or food lying around. It's a small space, and things get messy quickly. I thought these rules were reasonable, but the second Sarah dropped off the kids, things went downhill fast. Mia immediately ran into my living room and started jumping on the couch, despite me telling her not to. When I asked her to stop, she threw a tantrum and started screaming. Alex, on the other hand, immediately started knocking things over in the kitchen while looking for snacks, and when I told him he couldn't eat cookies before dinner, he started whining. I took a deep breath and reminded them about the rules. Mia then told me she didn't want to listen to some dumb rules in your stupid apartment. Sarah was still there when this happened, and instead of stepping in to correct them, she just stood there and told me to calm down and that they're just kids and that I should be more relaxed. I was honestly stunned because, in my opinion, it was not a matter of being relaxed. I had already been clear about the boundaries, and they weren't respecting them. That night, Mia didn't want to go to bed at 9 p.m. She kept saying she wasn't tired and wanted to stay up later. When I told her she needed to go to sleep, she yelled at me and ran into the living room to play with her tablet. I want to take the tablet away, and she hit me like full-on slapped my arm and told me to shut up. That's when I started getting upset because I don't tolerate violence, especially from kids who are old enough to know better. I called my sister and asked her to come back because I was starting to feel overwhelmed. Sarah came back an hour later, but instead of addressing her daughter's behavior, she just told me I needed to relax and that Mia was probably just tired from the trip. When I pointed out that Mia had hit me, she brushed it off and said, "Oh, she's just in a mood." The next day, I noticed that the kids weren't respecting the cleanliness of the apartment. There were toys everywhere, food crumbs all over the couch, and Alex had drawn on my coffee table with a marker. I asked Mia to help clean up, and she threw a tantrum, saying she didn't want to clean and that it was my job to do it. At this point, I was getting really frustrated. I had been more than accommodating and felt like Sarah was enabling their bad behavior. I told her that I didn't want them staying any longer, but she insisted that I was being unreasonable. She told me I was acting like I didn't know what it's like to have kids and that I should stop being so uptight. The final straw was when Mia broke one of my decorative vases. It wasn't an expensive item, but it was something I valued, and it was a gift from my late grandmother. I was really upset when it happened, but I tried to keep my cool. Mia didn't apologize. She just shrugged and said, "It's not like it was important." That was when I reached my breaking point. I told Sarah to come pick up her kids immediately, or I was calling a cab to send them home. Sarah wasn't happy, but she finally came to get them. She acted like I had overreacted and told me I'd never understand how hard it was to have kids. After she left, I was so relieved to have my apartment back in order, but now I feel like a bad guy. I love my niece and nephew, but I really don't think they should be allowed to act the way they did without consequences. My sister keeps texting me saying I should have been more patient with them, but I don't think it's fair for her to drop them off and expect me to just tolerate bad behavior. I've been feeling guilty because she's my sister, and I know she's probably exhausted from taking care of them full time, but at the same time, I'm upset that she didn't back me up when I set boundaries. I've tried explaining to her that I'm not trying to punish the kids, but that I need respect in my own home. AITA for refusing to let them stay again after all this? Or am I being too harsh on my sister and her kids? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she called off my wedding? So, a bit of context before I dive in. I'm a 28-year-old woman, and I have an older sister, 31, named Claire. We've always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, she was the golden child. She was popular, had tons of friends, always got good grades, and generally got away with a lot of things that I, being the quiet one, didn't. Our parents always favored her, and although I never minded that much growing up, it became more apparent as we got older. Anyway, fast forward a few years. I met a guy, Tom, when I was 24. We hit it off immediately. He was everything I wanted in a partner. Kind, supportive, funny, and we had so much in common. After dating for about 3 years, we decided to get engaged. Our engagement was nothing short of magical, and we set a wedding date for this upcoming summer. Here's where things get tricky. About 6 months ago, Claire announced that she was getting married to her boyfriend of 2 years, James. I was happy for her, of course, and I immediately started helping with the wedding planning. I was her maid of honor, and I did everything I could to make her day as perfect as possible. Even though I had my own wedding coming up, I wanted to make sure Claire's day was just as special as mine was going to be. But here's the thing. As her wedding approached, Claire began to get increasingly hostile towards me. She started making snide comments about my wedding plans, calling my dress too frumpy, or my choice of venue too cheap. She also made it very clear that she thought I was rushing into marriage and that Tom wasn't the right guy for me. I didn't take it to heart at first, thinking it was just pre-wedding stress, but it didn't stop. She started monopolizing all the family's attention, and whenever I tried to talk about my own wedding, she would interrupt or change the subject. The final straw came when Claire asked me to change my wedding date. Yes, you read that correctly. She said she couldn't stand the idea of sharing her wedding year with me, and she needed the spotlight for herself. She claimed it would be awkward for her to have her wedding right after mine, because she was the one who deserved to be the center of attention. She even told me that I should just move my wedding to the fall and not ruin her moment. I was absolutely stunned and hurt. At first, I thought she was joking. But no, she was serious. She said that if I refused to move my wedding, she would call off my wedding. I'm not sure what she meant by that, but it was clear that she was going to make my life a living hell unless I complied. I told her that I wouldn't change the date and that I wasn't going to let her dictate my life anymore. From that point on, Claire stopped talking to me. She didn't respond to my texts, ignored my calls, and went as far as to tell our parents that I was being unreasonable. They tried to convince me to move my wedding, but I refused. Eventually, she did what I thought she would do. She called off her wedding to James. She said that she didn't want to get married if it wasn't going to be perfect, and that I was the reason things were ruined. She also told me that I had disrespected her in front of the family. I've been devastated. I feel like I've lost my sister. She won't speak to me, and all the planning for her wedding has been completely thrown out the window. Our parents are upset with me, and while they're trying to play both sides, they've made it clear that they think I'm at fault. They want me to make amends and apologize, but I honestly don't know what to say. I feel like I'm the one who's been wronged here. Now, here's the big dilemma. Claire is getting married again, this time to James, and she's planning her wedding for the exact same date as mine. She's called me multiple times asking me to be at her wedding, but I'm not sure what to do. I feel like she's being manipulative, and I've already made my feelings clear. But my family insists that I'm being childish and that I should just let it go and be there for her on her big day. Here's the problem. I don't want to go. I've already told her I won't be attending if she insists on having her wedding on the same date as mine. I've had to deal with so much drama because of her, and now it feels like she's trying to control everything, even my wedding. I know some people might say that I should just forgive her, but I feel like this has gone too far. So, AITA for refusing to attend her wedding after everything she's done? Should I just suck it up and go? Or is it reasonable for me to stand my ground? And if I do end up skipping her wedding, am I wrong for doing so? I'm just so torn and don't know what to do anymore. Help, please. So this is a bit of a long story, but here we go. I, 30F, have a younger sister, Jenny, 26F. We've always had a fairly good relationship, though like any siblings, we've had our ups and downs. Lately, Things have been tense because Jenny recently got engaged to her fiancé, Mike, 29M, and their wedding planning has been interesting. For context, I've struggled with my weight for as long as I can remember. I've always been heavier than most people in my family, and I've tried a lot of different diets, fitness plans, and even therapy to address my issues with food and body image. I've had some success over the years, but it's been a slow process, and there are still moments where I struggle with my confidence. Now, Jenny has always been very conscious about her appearance, and she's very thin, naturally athletic, and takes a lot of pride in how she looks. I've never minded her being in great shape. She's my sister, after all, but over the years, she's made comments that have really hurt my feelings. I try to brush them off, but some things are harder to ignore. The issue began about 6 months ago when Jenny started planning her wedding. She was really excited, but things took a weird turn when she asked me to be a bridesmaid. She and I'd always been close, so I was really honored and excited at first. But then she said something that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. We were at lunch, and she casually brought up the subject of dresses. She said, "I found a designer who makes these gorgeous dresses, but I'm a little concerned about the sizing. I mean, I know you're bigger than me, so I'm just hoping they'll have something that fits you." I was a little taken aback by the comment, but I tried to brush it off. I told her I was sure we could find something, and that it wasn't a big deal. Then, a few weeks later, she sent me a text message with a photo of a dress she wanted us to wear. It was beautiful, but also very form-fitting. I immediately had doubts. I didn't think it would fit me, and I wasn't sure how I would feel in it given my body image struggles. I tried to be honest with her and explain that I wasn't sure the dress would suit me, and that I'd feel uncomfortable in something so tight. Jenny responded with something like, "Oh, it'll look fine on you. You just need to lose a little weight, and I'm sure it'll be perfect." That comment really stung, especially since I've been working on myself for years and still didn't feel like my body was ever good enough for her. I told her that her comment hurt me and that I was working on my weight in my own time and on my own terms. I asked her to be a little more considerate and respectful of my feelings. She got defensive and said I was too sensitive and that I should just be grateful I was even included in the wedding at all. After that, things started to go downhill. She would make comments every now and then like, "You'd look so great if you could just shed a few pounds," or "You're so beautiful, if only you would just care more about how you look." She even suggested I go on a juice cleanse or get a personal trainer before the wedding. I began to feel like I wasn't really wanted in the wedding party, and that my presence was conditional on me looking a certain way. Every time I tried to talk to her about how her comments made me feel, she brushed me off and called me overdramatic. Fast forward to a month before the wedding. Jenny's bridal shower was coming up, and I really didn't want to attend because I was feeling so hurt and uncomfortable about the whole situation. But I also didn't want to disappoint her or cause any drama, so I reluctantly agreed. The day of the shower came, and I showed up, but Jenny barely acknowledged me. The whole event was just about her, which I guess is to be expected, but she didn't seem to care at all about how I was feeling. Then, the night before the wedding, I got a text from her that said, "Just a heads up, the dress I picked for you will probably be a little tight, but I'm sure you'll pull it off. Don't forget to do your hair and makeup. Okay? I want everything to be perfect." That was the last straw for me. I felt like she wasn't just criticizing my body anymore. She was telling me that my worth was entirely tied to my appearance. I knew I wasn't going to be able to go through with it, so I called her the night before the wedding and told her I couldn't attend. I explained that I felt like I was being treated like a project, and that I didn't want to be part of an event where my appearance was the main focus. She started crying and said I was being selfish, that I was ruining her special day by not supporting her. She even accused me of not caring about her enough to try and fix myself for the wedding. Needless to say, my decision caused a lot of tension between us. Our family is split. Some say I was right to stand up for myself, while others think I should have just sucked it up and been there for her, no matter how I felt. Jenny hasn't spoken to me much since then, and I feel like our relationship has been permanently damaged. She's posted on social media about how I betrayed her, and I'm getting messages from mutual friends telling me I'm being selfish and hurtful. I'm really torn. I know I wasn't treated well, but I also love my sister and don't want to lose our relationship completely. AITA for not going to her wedding? AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law and her family stay at my house after they showed up uninvited and acted entitled? So, here's the situation. I, 29F, live in a small, 3-bedroom house with my husband, 32M, and our 2-year-old daughter. We don't have a lot of space, but we make it work. We've been married for 3 years and have a pretty peaceful life. My husband's family lives about 2 hours away, and we don't see them all that often, but it's not like we don't get along. Now, my sister-in-law, Emily, 34, is a bit much. She's always had a tendency to act like the world revolves around her, and it's gotten worse over the years. She's married with 2 kids, 5 and 7, and every time they visit, it's like a whirlwind of chaos. My husband and I have talked about it multiple times, and while he loves his sister, he admits that she can be exhausting. I've always tried to be understanding because, hey, family is family, but I'm starting to lose patience. A few weeks ago, Emily called me out of the blue and said she and her family were going to be in town for a couple of days and asked if they could stay with us. I told her that we didn't have the space and it wasn't the best time. I explained that our guest room was already being used for some other guests who were coming in later that week. I didn't think it would be an issue, but Emily got really upset. She said something like, "I'm family. You should make room for me. You know how difficult it is to find accommodations with 2 kids." I told her I understood, but I couldn't change the situation. A few days later, I get a call from my husband while he's at work. Emily had sent him a message saying she and her family were coming anyway and would be at our house in a couple of hours. Apparently, my husband didn't really know what to do either, and he called me to check in. I told him absolutely not. There was no way they could stay at our house, especially after I'd already said no. I made it clear to him that this wasn't just about space. It was about boundaries and respect. At this point, Emily and her family had already driven to our city. I started getting frantic calls and texts from her, saying things like, "We're 30 minutes away. Why isn't the door open? And you can't leave us out in the cold with 2 kids." I didn't know what to do. I had to be firm, so I told my husband to talk to her and tell her that we were not going to accommodate them. I also reminded him that it wasn't just my decision. He was part of this too, and he needed to back me up. When he got home, he was upset. He said I should have been more understanding and that it was family, and she was just trying to make things work. I told him that I understood, but that didn't mean I should have to sacrifice our peace and comfort just because they showed up uninvited and unannounced. At that point, it was too late for them to find another place to stay, and Emily's family ended up booking a hotel nearby. After all of that, things have been pretty tense. My husband says I should have let it go and helped them out, but I feel like I did the right thing by setting a boundary. I've been called selfish, unreasonable, and too hard to please by other members of his family. They think I should have just sucked it up and let them stay, especially because they're family and family helps each other out. I'm really struggling with this because I feel like I was being reasonable. I'd already told Emily no, and she ignored that. I don't think it's fair that I'm being blamed for something that wasn't my fault. My husband hasn't fully come around yet, and he's still upset with me for not being more understanding. So, AITA for not letting my sister-in-law and her family stay at our house after they showed up uninvited. I've been thinking a lot about whether I overreacted, but I honestly feel like I did the right thing. It's hard because I really don't want to be the bad guy here, but I feel like I'm the one being blamed for sticking to my guns. Would love to hear other perspectives on this one. I, 28F, am getting married in 2 weeks to my fiancée, Alex, 30M. We've been engaged for about 1.5 years and have been planning this wedding for 6 months. Alex and I decided to have a fairly traditional ceremony. Nothing extravagant, but with enough space for family and friends, and we've gone all out for the reception. I've always wanted a smaller but meaningful wedding, and that's what we're trying to have. The issue started when my sister, Emma, 30F, announced that she would be bringing her newborn, Henry, 3 months old, to the wedding. Emma and I have always had a rocky relationship, mostly due to her being a bit self-centered and not really respecting boundaries. She had Henry unexpectedly, and while I'm thrilled for her, I also know that Emma tends to ignore everyone's needs when it comes to her kids. It's hard to even describe, but she's the type of mom who thinks her child should be the center of attention in any room. I didn't think much of it at first when she mentioned she was bringing Henry, but then it started to hit me that this might cause problems. We have a very tight schedule for the ceremony and reception, and Alex and I really wanted to avoid any disruptions. My wedding isn't a place for babies crying or for someone to need constant attention throughout the evening. The fact that Emma has been a little tone-deaf about how she expects to be accommodated made me worry even more. So, a week ago, I reached out to Emma privately and explained that while I loved her and Henry, I didn't think it would be the best idea to bring him to the wedding. I told her that weddings are long and can be really overwhelming for babies, and that it would probably be better if she arranged for someone to watch him, even if it was just for the evening. I emphasized that I would be disappointed if she couldn't come, but that I didn't think it was practical for her to bring a newborn to a big event like this. Emma immediately became upset. She said that I was being unreasonable and that this would be the first time she was bringing Henry to a family gathering. She went on to say that I was excluding her, and that if I really cared about her, I would want her to be comfortable and happy, especially since she's a new mom. She also mentioned how hurtful it was that I didn't want to have my nephew there for such a special day. She suggested that I wasn't being empathetic to her situation as a new parent, and it sounded like I was asking her to choose between her family and her baby, which hurt her deeply. I tried to explain my side again, but she kept insisting I was being inconsiderate. She even called me selfish for prioritizing my wedding over her new motherhood experience. I was caught off guard because I genuinely didn't think asking her to leave Henry with a babysitter for one evening would be that big of a deal, but it felt like she was turning it into this huge personal affront. I didn't want to have this discussion at all, but she continued to pressure me, and after a few back-and-forth exchanges, I finally told her that if she wasn't willing to leave Henry with a sitter or arrange something else, then I would have to reconsider her attendance at the wedding. I made it clear that I wasn't trying to be hurtful, but that a newborn would disrupt the event, and I had to prioritize the plans we had worked so hard on. That's when she really lost it. She said that I was being cruel and that I was putting my wedding day over her mental and emotional well-being. She also said I was acting like I didn't care about her son, which is honestly ridiculous because I love Henry and want the best for him. Emma and I haven't spoken much since, but now I feel like I'm being painted as the villain. I've talked to a few friends about the situation, and some agree with me, but others think I'm being unreasonable and that Emma should have a right to bring her baby to the wedding. I don't know if I'm being too rigid in my expectations, but I feel like this is my day, and I shouldn't have to worry about a crying baby or someone having to leave the ceremony to calm the baby down. I really don't want to escalate things further, but I'm starting to think maybe I went too far by even suggesting she might not be invited if she insists on bringing Henry. I can't imagine my wedding without my sister there, but at the same time, I don't think I should have to sacrifice the atmosphere and flow of my special day because of a newborn. So, AITA for telling my sister she shouldn't bring her baby to my wedding, even though it's the first time she's visiting with him. AITA for refusing to attend my best friend's wedding after I found out she's having a child with my ex. I, 28F, have been best friends with Lena, 28F, since we were 5 years old. We did everything together, school, trips, even living together in college. Lena was the person who knew me best, and I was the same for her. Over the years, we had our fair share of disagreements, but we always worked things out because, well, she was my best friend. Now, to give you some background, I was in a serious relationship with Jake, 30M, for about 4 years. We met when I was 22, and it felt like the real deal. He was charming, supportive, and funny. I really thought he was the one. But when we hit the 4-year mark, things started to fall apart. He became distant, and I eventually caught him texting a woman. After confronting him, he admitted to cheating and told me he didn't want to be in a relationship anymore. The breakup was incredibly painful for me. I lost not only a boyfriend, but also someone I thought I'd spend my future with. But what made it even worse was how Lena responded. Lena had been supportive at first, comforting me through the pain, but about 2 months after the breakup, she started acting strange around me. I didn't think too much of it, assuming she was just dealing with her own feelings about me and Jake. Then, a month later, I found out that Lena and Jake were dating. My world fell apart. I felt betrayed by the two people I loved most. At first, they told me they'd been friends since my breakup, but it felt like they were doing it behind my back the entire time. Lena swore that she never crossed any boundaries when I was with Jake, and that she had no feelings for him while we were together, but it didn't matter. I felt completely blindsided and hurt. For a while, I cut off contact with both of them. I needed space to heal. Over time, I started to accept that Lena and Jake were together, and I tried to move forward with my life. It wasn't easy, and I'll be honest, I didn't want to forgive them right away. But after a year, I decided to at least try to be civil with Lena. She apologized, and I told her I appreciated her apology, but I wasn't sure I'd ever fully trust her again. Still, I thought we could rebuild our friendship, even if it wasn't the same as it was before. Fast forward to about 6 months ago. Lena called me and told me that she was engaged to Jake and that they were expecting a child together. Honestly, I was stunned. I didn't know how to react. I wasn't really surprised, but hearing it stung. It felt like everything I had gone through in the past was coming back to haunt me. Lena invited me to the wedding, and while I was trying to be supportive, I couldn't help but feel like I wasn't ready to be a part of that day. The whole thing felt too raw. She had gotten engaged to the man who had cheated on me, and now they were having a child together. It felt like a slap in the face. I told her I wasn't comfortable attending the wedding. I tried to explain that I wasn't ready to be there, not just because of the history with Jake, but because it was just too much for me to handle. I needed more time. She tried to convince me, saying I should be happy for her and that this was a new chapter in our lives. But it wasn't just about her. It was about me, too. She became upset and told me that I was being selfish. She said that I was letting the past dictate the present and that I should be there for her on her special day. She said if I didn't show up, I was telling her that I didn't care about her happiness or our friendship. I felt awful, but I couldn't bring myself to say yes. I still wasn't over the pain of the betrayal. Our conversation ended on a tense note. A few days later, I got a message from Jake. He apologized for everything that had happened and told me that he understood why I felt hurt, but that I should still come to the wedding for Lena's sake. He said he didn't expect us to be close, but he wanted to show me that he had changed. I just couldn't bring myself to reply. The thought of seeing them both, especially with the baby news, made me physically nauseous. I've been in therapy to deal with the fallout from my breakup with Jake, and while I've made progress, I'm still struggling with the idea of being around them as a couple, let alone celebrating their wedding. A few of my other friends have weighed in, some saying I should just let go of the past and be there for Lena, while others say I'm justified in how I feel. I honestly don't know what to do. I want to be a good friend, but at the same time, I'm not sure I can emotionally handle this. So, AITA for refusing to attend my best friend's wedding after I found out she's having a child with my ex. AITA for calling off my wedding after my fiancée revealed something about her family. I, 29M, and my fiancée, 28F, have been together for almost 5 years now. We've always had a great relationship, full of laughs, love, and respect. We met in college and hit it off right away. We've always talked about getting married, having kids, and building a life together. It seemed like a no-brainer for us, so when I proposed to her last year, she said yes without hesitation. The past few months have been a whirlwind of wedding planning. We've been working on the venue, guest list, catering, and everything in between. Everything seemed to be coming together perfectly until last weekend when we had a bit of a shocking conversation. I've always known that her family dynamics are a little complicated. She comes from a wealthy background, and while they've been supportive of our relationship, there have been a few moments of tension here and there. I didn't think much of it first, since every family has their quirks. But recently, there's been a lot of pressure on me from her parents regarding the wedding. They wanted it to be an extravagant affair, but I've always been more practical about money, so I wasn't really on board with going overboard. I kept telling them that we should stick to our budget, but they pushed back a lot. We eventually found a compromise, but it wasn't easy. One evening, after we had just finished discussing wedding plans with her parents, my fiancée and I were sitting down for a quiet dinner at our apartment. Out of nowhere, she told me that there was something she needed to tell me. I asked her what it was, and she seemed really nervous about it. She started explaining that, while she's always loved me and thought we were perfect for each other, there was something about her family that I didn't know. She then told me that her family has a long-standing tradition of marrying into money. Essentially, her parents expect that when she marries, her partner will either come from a wealthy family or at least have a significant financial profile to match their lifestyle. She told me that her parents were fine with our relationship for a while, but they were still holding out hope that I could somehow rise to their level financially. She even admitted that they had made some subtle comments about it over the years, but she had always tried to brush it off. At first, I was confused and didn't really know what she meant by all of this. But then she went on to explain that her parents had, in fact, been actively setting up opportunities for me to make more money. They had tried to push me into some business ventures that they thought would make me rich. She said they weren't just trying to help me succeed, but were actually hoping I would start pulling in six figures or more to fit into their lifestyle. I was stunned. I've always had a good job, a solid career, and I make decent money. I've never felt like I was struggling financially. But I was raised in a family that values hard work and being self-sufficient over wealth. My family isn't poor by any means, but we aren't swimming in money either, and that's never bothered me. I've always been proud of the life I've built, and I've never felt pressured to keep up with anyone, let alone my fiancé's parents. I asked her why she never told me about this earlier. She said she didn't want to ruin our relationship or bring up anything that might make me feel bad, and she had hoped that the opportunities would eventually work out without me noticing. But now, as we were getting closer to the wedding, her parents were pushing harder. They had started asking her if I had received any job offers that would put me in their financial bracket, or if I had considered starting a business with some of their connections. I felt sick to my stomach. I understand that her family may have certain expectations, but the more she spoke, the more it became clear that they weren't just concerned with our happiness or compatibility. They were focused on money, and they were subtly, and not so subtly, pressuring her to find someone who could meet those expectations. And by extension, I was being measured by the same standard. I told her that this was completely unacceptable to me. I wasn't some kind of trophy or prize that had to meet a certain financial threshold to be worthy of marriage. I wasn't going to sacrifice my values, my job, or my sense of self just to please her parents. She tried to explain that she didn't agree with their approach, but she had just been going along with it because she didn't know how to handle the situation. I thought about it for a while, and I made a decision. I called off the wedding. I told her that I couldn't marry her if her family's expectations were going to be so entangled in our relationship. I didn't want to spend my life with someone who was okay with her parents dictating the terms of our marriage. She was absolutely devastated, and so was I, to be honest. I never thought it would come to this. She begged me not to call it off, saying that she loved me and that we could figure it out. But I just couldn't see how we could move forward in a marriage when such a fundamental issue existed. I told her I needed to think about whether I could even continue the relationship at this point. It's been a few days now, and I'm still reeling from the conversation. I've had a lot of people tell me that I did the right thing, that no one should be in a relationship where money is such a big factor. Others have said I overreacted and that her family might just be looking out for her, but that I shouldn't let that destroy what we have. I love her, but I can't ignore the reality of her family's pressure. I just don't know if this is something that can be overcome. AITA for calling off the wedding because of this? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. I, 29F, have a younger brother, James, 25M, who has been dating his fiancée, Vanessa, 28F, for about 3 years now. I've always gotten along well with both of them, though my relationship with Vanessa has been a bit strained from the start. She's very sweet, but often comes across as a little manipulative, for lack of a better word. She can be charming when she wants something, but I've noticed that she's very quick to play the victim if things aren't going her way. A couple of weeks ago, Vanessa called me in a panic. She said she was kicked out of her apartment because her landlord decided to sell the building, and she had to move out with very little notice. I was initially sympathetic, of course. No one wants to be in that situation. But as she started telling me more details, I started feeling like something wasn't adding up. She mentioned that she had been behind on rent for a couple of months, and her landlord gave her a chance to pay up, but never gave her any warning that they were going to sell and evict her immediately. Now, I've been renting for a while, and I know that tenants usually get more time than that to get things sorted before being kicked out. Something about this story didn't sit right with me, but I figured she was just stressed out, and I didn't want to come across as judgmental or unsympathetic. Anyway, Vanessa asked if she could stay with me temporarily until she figured out what to do next. She said she'd only need a week or two at most, and since I live in a decent-sized apartment on my own, I didn't think it'd be that big of a deal. The problem is that I've been living alone for a while, and I value my space. I work from home, and my apartment is my sanctuary. I know this probably sounds selfish, but I wasn't entirely comfortable with the idea of someone moving in, even temporarily. But I didn't want to seem like a jerk, so I agreed. The first few days were fine, but then things started to get weird. Vanessa had brought over more stuff than I expected. At first, it was just a few bags of clothes and some essentials, but before I knew it, she had moved half of her wardrobe, her entire makeup collection, and a bunch of other personal items into my guest room. I told her that if she was going to stay for only a week or two, she needed to keep her stuff minimal. But she just shrugged it off and said, "It's just until I find a place." Fair enough, but at this point, I could already tell it was going to be longer than a couple of weeks. The real issue came when she started taking over the space. Vanessa started using my kitchen to make huge meals at all hours of the day. She'd leave dishes in the sink for days, and I had to keep reminding her to clean up after herself. I'm not a clean freak, but I don't want to live in a mess. She'd also leave her things scattered around the living room, and I found myself constantly picking up after her, even though I had mentioned a few times that she should be more considerate of the shared space. I didn't want to be the one to cause conflict, so I let a lot of things slide. Then came the breaking point. One morning, I woke up to the sound of someone talking in my living room. I went out to see what was going on and found Vanessa on the phone with a moving company, casually discussing moving her stuff into my apartment permanently. I asked her what she was doing, and she told me that she found an apartment, but it wouldn't be available for a few weeks. So she was thinking of just staying with me longer until it was ready. I told her that was not acceptable. I didn't mind her being there temporarily, but I never agreed to her living with me long term. She seemed stunned and immediately became defensive. She said that I had invited her in and that it was my responsibility to help her out. I told her that I was being generous by letting her stay at all, but this was my space, and I wasn't prepared for a permanent house guest. Vanessa was upset, but I thought we had come to an understanding. I even offered to help her look for a new place, but I insisted that she needed to find somewhere else to stay while she was in between apartments. She didn't take it well and started crying, saying that no one had ever been this cold to her when she was in a tough spot, and that she was going to lose everything. She said I didn't care about her or her situation and that I was being selfish by not helping her more. The next day, James called me. He was angry and said that I was being unreasonable and that I needed to let Vanessa stay longer. He said she was going through a rough time, and I should be there for her because she's family. He even said I was being too cold-hearted for telling her to leave, and I was being unsupportive by not offering to help her in a more generous way. I tried to explain that I didn't mind helping, but there was a limit to what I could do. I didn't sign up for a roommate, and I didn't want to feel like I was being taken advantage of. Now, my parents have gotten involved, and they're saying that I'm overreacting. They told me that family is supposed to help each other in times of need, and that I should let Vanessa stay as long as she needs to get back on her feet. They said I should stop being so uptight about my personal space and just be more supportive. I feel like I'm being reasonable, but at this point, I'm starting to question whether I'm in the wrong. AITA for not letting my brother's fiancée move in with me longer than originally agreed. I don't want to cause family drama, but I also don't want to feel like I'm being used. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay at my house after they got into a huge argument during their engagement party. So I, 29F, have a sister, Lucy, 27F, who recently got engaged to her long-term boyfriend, Mark, 30M. Their engagement party was last weekend, and things ended up getting really messy, to the point where I'm honestly questioning whether I did the right thing by refusing to let Mark stay at my house. To give you some background, I've always been very close with Lucy. We've had our ups and downs, but we've supported each other through a lot, and I was thrilled when she found someone she was serious about in Mark. I met him about 4 years ago, and while he's always been polite and friendly, I'll admit that I've never felt like he was the best match for her. He's a bit more reserved and can come off as aloof, which made me feel like Lucy was putting in more effort to make the relationship work than he was. But that's her business, and I've always been supportive because she seemed happy. However, at the engagement party, things took a turn. Everything started out fine. There was music, food, dancing, and all that typical party stuff. Lucy was glowing, and Mark seemed happy enough too. But after a few hours, I started noticing that they were barely interacting with each other. I would catch Mark off to the side on his phone, and Lucy was off talking to a couple of other people, but they didn't seem like they were having fun together. Honestly, it was weird. At one point during the evening, the whole thing came to a head. Mark's sister, Tina, 32F, was there too, and I overheard a heated conversation between her and Mark. Apparently, Lucy had said something to Tina earlier in the day about how she felt that Mark wasn't fully invested in the relationship. Of course, Tina was defending her brother, and things escalated quickly. Lucy eventually confronted Mark about it in front of the whole group. She told him that she felt like she was the only one making an effort in their relationship, and that he always seemed emotionally distant. Mark, who was already tipsy by this point, got defensive. He started raising his voice, saying that Lucy was overreacting and that he had his own struggles but didn't need to air them out in front of everyone. He then accused Lucy of constantly trying to control him, which, to be fair, Lucy could be a little controlling, but it didn't seem like the time or place to bring it up. The argument got louder, and a lot of people started watching. At one point, Mark stormed out of the venue, and Lucy was left in tears. She ran outside after him, and I could hear them arguing in the parking lot. It was an absolute mess. Some of the guests were uncomfortable, and others tried to diffuse the situation, but it didn't work. It was one of the most awkward moments I've ever experienced. After the dust settled, the party ended early, and I took Lucy back to my house. We were both pretty shaken up by what had happened. I wanted to offer her a calm place to relax and maybe talk things through. At that point, I was still trying to process what I'd seen. I wasn't sure if it was just a one-off fight or if there were deeper issues between them. Then Mark called me. He said he needed somewhere to stay for the night because he had nowhere else to go. His sister was staying with friends, and he didn't want to go home alone after the argument with Lucy. He asked if he could stay at my place since Lucy was obviously upset and didn't want to be around him. I hesitated because, honestly, I wasn't sure what to do. I didn't want to make Lucy's night worse by having him stay in my home, but I also didn't want to completely shut him out. I talked to Lucy about it first, asking her what she thought. She was adamant that she didn't want him near her right now, and said that if I let him stay, it would just make everything worse. I agreed with her because after hearing the argument, I didn't feel comfortable having Mark in my space when tensions were so high. Plus, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about their relationship. It was like everything I'd seen that night was a glimpse into bigger issues. When I told Mark that he couldn't stay at my house, he got really upset. He said I was taking sides, and that I was being unreasonable for not offering him a place to stay when he was clearly upset. He insisted that Lucy was being dramatic and that he had every right to have some space. He tried to guilt-trip me, saying that I was supposed to be family and should support him during a tough time. I told him I couldn't let him stay at my house given the circumstances, and I wished him the best, but I didn't want to make things even more awkward than they already were. The next morning, Lucy ended up calling things off with Mark. She told me that she'd been thinking things through and realized that the relationship wasn't what she wanted anymore. Mark wasn't as emotionally available as she needed, and she felt like he'd been shutting her out for a long time. They both agreed it was over, and she was heartbroken but felt like it was the right decision. Now, here's the problem. Mark called me again the day after the breakup, asking for my support. He said that I shouldn't have encouraged Lucy to break up with him and that I should have been there for him more. He accused me of betraying him, and now my family is split on the situation. Some people are on my side, saying I did the right thing by not letting him stay with me, while others think I should have been more understanding since he was going through a rough time. I'm now wondering if I should have handled the whole situation differently. I was just trying to protect Lucy and give her space, but I'm worried that by refusing to let him stay at my house, I made things worse for him and escalated the situation. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay at my house after their engagement party meltdown. AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancé move in with me after she was kicked out of her parents' house. I, 28F, have a brother, Danny, 26M, who has been dating his fiancée, Michelle, 25F, for about 2 years now. Danny and Michelle have always been a bit of an odd couple. I get along with Michelle just fine, but our relationship has always felt a little strained because of her family dynamics. Michelle comes from a very wealthy family, and her parents are quite controlling. They have a very specific idea of what their daughter's life should look like, and they don't hide their disapproval of many of her choices. Michelle often confides in me about her strained relationship with them. Her parents are not happy about her relationship with Danny, and they have always pressured her to break up with him because they don't think he's good enough for her. They also pressure her to pursue a career path that's more aligned with their expectations, rather than what she actually wants to do. As a result, Michelle has been somewhat isolated from her family. A few weeks ago, Michelle called me in the middle of the night, sounding distraught. She told me that her parents had kicked her out of their house because she refused to end her relationship with Danny. They said she was being irresponsible and choosing a man over her family, and that she would never be welcome back if she didn't break up with him. I felt awful for her, and I immediately told her that she could come stay with me while she figured things out. Here's where things get complicated. I live alone in a small 2-bedroom apartment. While I do have a guest room, it's not exactly a luxury space. It's a bit cramped, and I use it as my home office. I work from home and rely on the space to stay productive. It's also not in the best condition, as I haven't really had the time or energy to decorate or make it super comfortable. When Michelle arrived, she made it clear that she wasn't thrilled about staying in the guest room and suggested that I move my office into the living room so she could have more space. At first, I thought it was just her frustration speaking. I told her I needed my office space for work and that the guest room was the best option. She wasn't happy, but she said she would make do. Over the next few days, though, Michelle started pushing more about the living arrangements. She would complain that the guest room was too small and too cold, and she'd ask if I could rearrange my office to make room for her in a bigger part of the apartment. I kept telling her that it wasn't feasible and that I needed my office space for work. After about a week of this, Michelle started getting more passive-aggressive. She would leave little comments like, "It's fine, I guess I'll just have to make do with this tiny room," or "It's really weird that you'd rather have your office than let me stay in the living room." I thought family came first. She also started to bring up things like, well, if Danny and I were living together, we'd have a bigger place. We wouldn't have to settle for something so small. I could tell she was getting frustrated, but I was also starting to feel like she was being a little unreasonable. The last straw for me came when Michelle asked if she could bring her dog to stay with us. She said her parents had refused to let her take her dog when they kicked her out, and she didn't want to be separated from him. Now, I love animals, but I have a strict no pets policy in my apartment because of my allergies. I explained this to her, and she was not pleased. She started crying and accusing me of being heartless. "How could you do this to me? You know how much I love him," she said. I felt bad for her, but I was firm that I couldn't make an exception. At this point, I was starting to feel like Michelle was taking advantage of my kindness. I understand she's going through a tough time, but I'm also trying to live my life and maintain some semblance of boundaries. I had already gone out of my way to let her stay with me, and it felt like she was not respecting my space or my needs. We ended up having a huge argument, and she told me I was being unsupportive and selfish. I told her that I was doing the best I could, but that I couldn't keep rearranging my life to accommodate her every demand. Since then, Danny has called me several times, asking me to reconsider. He says that Michelle is really upset and feels abandoned, and that I should be more understanding. He told me that I'm being too rigid, and that I should help her more since she's essentially homeless. I feel terrible about this, but I still think I'm in the right. I've given her a place to stay, and I've tried to be supportive, but I don't think I should have to completely uproot my life to accommodate her. I've been clear with her about what I can and can't offer, and I don't think that makes me a bad person. I've tried to talk to Danny about how I feel, but he just keeps telling me that I'm making things harder for Michelle and that I need to put my issues aside for the sake of family. I don't want to cause any drama, but I also don't want to be taken advantage of. So, AITA for refusing to let Michelle move in with me more permanently or change the living situation to suit her needs. AITA for demanding my sister-in-law pay me back for the wedding dress she ruined. So I, 30F, got married last year, and the whole process was a bit of a roller coaster. My wedding dress was something I had dreamed of for years. It was this beautiful, vintage-inspired gown with delicate lace details and a long train. It wasn't cheap, but I saved up for it and paid it off in full months before the wedding. It was exactly what I wanted, and I was incredibly proud of it. Now, my husband's family is interesting to say the least. My husband, 32M, is the youngest of 5 siblings, and his family is close, almost too close at times. His sister, Emily, 28F, is the closest to me in age, and while we've gotten along fine for the most part, we have had our disagreements. She can be a bit overbearing, and she has a tendency to think she's always right. Anyway, the day of our wedding arrives. Everything was perfect, well, almost. As I was getting ready to walk down the aisle, I was so nervous, but so excited to marry the love of my life. I was in the bridal suite with my mom, my bridesmaids, and some of my husband's family. At one point, Emily came in and asked if she could help with something. Now, I didn't think much of it at the time. She had offered to help with a bunch of things leading up to the wedding, and I had politely declined because I knew I wanted to handle everything myself. But I figured maybe she just wanted to lend a hand in the final moments, so I said sure. She then said she would help me adjust my dress since I was having some trouble getting into the corset back. I told her it was fine, but she insisted, so I relented. I didn't know it at the time, but her help would cause a nightmare. Apparently, while trying to adjust my dress, Emily got frustrated that it was too tight and started tugging at it harder than necessary. At some point, the lace trim on the side of the dress got caught on the edge of a chair, and she accidentally ripped it. I didn't realize this at first because I was focused on getting ready, but when I went to look at myself in the full-length mirror, I saw it, a big tear along the side of my wedding dress. I was in absolute shock. I had dreamed about this dress for years, and here it was, ruined in the final moments before the ceremony. I immediately started crying. Emily, of course, didn't help matters. She started saying things like, "It's not that bad, you can't even see in certain lights, and you should just enjoy your day and stop stressing over a tiny rip." She didn't even seem to care about how much I was devastated. I was in full-blown panic mode. My mom tried to help me calm down, but I couldn't stop thinking about how my wedding was going to be marred by this one mistake. I even considered calling off the ceremony for a moment, but of course, that would have been ridiculous. Anyway, the ceremony happened, and I tried to hold it together. I thought maybe the tear would be less noticeable when I was actually walking down the aisle, but no, it was still obvious to anyone who looked closely. Afterward, I went to Taylor to see if anything could be done. The tailor told me that the rip was too large to fix easily, and that it would be noticeable no matter what. At this point, I was angry, devastated, and honestly felt betrayed. My wedding dress was a once-in-a-lifetime piece, and I felt like I would never be able to fully enjoy it now. I tried to talk to my husband about it, but he kind of brushed it off, saying it wasn't a big deal and that I should just be happy with everything else that went well. He told me that it wasn't worth making a huge deal over something so small in the grand scheme of things. Well, that's when I turned to Emily. I texted her and asked her to come over so we could talk. When she arrived, I didn't waste any time getting to the point. I told her that her actions had ruined my dress and that I expected her to pay for the damage. She was stunned and immediately started defending herself, saying it was an accident and that I was blowing it out of proportion. I told her that I had saved up for months for this dress, and it was my one shot to wear something I had dreamed about for years. She kept insisting that it wasn't a big deal and that I needed to let it go, but I wasn't having it. The rip wasn't just some little thing I could shrug off. It was a permanent mark on what should have been a perfect day. The argument escalated, and she eventually stormed out, telling me I was being unreasonable. The next few days were incredibly tense between us. She started texting my husband, complaining that I was being too hard on her, and he, of course, sided with her, saying it was just a wedding dress and that I should be more understanding. I told him that it wasn't just about the dress. It was about how I felt like my special day had been tainted by someone else's mistake. Now, We're in a full-blown family drama. I've gotten messages from other relatives telling me that I'm being petty and that I should just get over it. Some have even said that if I really cared about the dress so much, I should have made sure Emily didn't touch it in the first place. I've tried explaining how much this dress meant to me and how I feel like I was wronged, but no one seems to understand. My sister-in-law has basically cut me off completely, and my husband is mad at me for making a big deal out of it. So, AITA for demanding my sister-in-law pay me back for the dress she ruined, or should I just let it go? AITA for confronting my best friend over her constant boundary crossing with my boyfriend? So, a bit of backstory here. I, 24F, have been with my boyfriend, 26M, for a little over 2 years. We've had our ups and downs, but overall, things are going really well. I trust him completely, and I feel like our relationship is solid. My best friend, Maggie, also 24F, and I have known each other since high school. We've always been super close, and I've always considered her one of the most important people in my life. Now, here's the thing. Maggie has a habit of getting way too comfortable with my boyfriend in a way that makes me uncomfortable. I don't know if it's intentional or just her personality, but over the course of our friendship, I've started noticing a pattern of behavior that crosses boundaries. It started small, like her calling him babe, or touching his arm a little too often when we were all hanging out. I tried to brush it off at first, thinking it was just friendly teasing, but it gradually started to get worse. She'd flirt with him openly in front of me, making comments like, if I were your girlfriend, I'd give you all the attention you deserve, or it's too bad you're taken. Otherwise, we'd make a great couple. At first, I thought maybe I was just being overly sensitive, but after a while, it started to feel like she was deliberately trying to make me uncomfortable. There was one night that really stuck with me. We were all at a party, and Maggie was getting pretty drunk. She ended up sitting on my boyfriend's lap, laughing and talking really closely to him. I didn't say anything at the time, but I was furious. He seemed uncomfortable too, but he didn't want to make a scene, so he didn't say anything. I could tell that he was trying to brush it off like it wasn't a big deal, but it absolutely was. I tried to talk to him about it after the party, but he reassured me that it was nothing, that Maggie was just drunk, and that I shouldn't let it get to me. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was disrespecting my relationship. Things didn't get better. In fact, they escalated. Maggie started making comments about how she loved spending time with my boyfriend and how they got along better than she did with her own partners. She also started texting him more frequently, asking for advice or just sending random memes. At one point, I overheard her talking about him with another friend of ours, saying that she thought he was cute and she could definitely see herself with him. I was furious, but I didn't want to accuse her of anything without talking to her first. So, last weekend, I finally had enough and decided to have a heart-to-heart with her. We were having coffee together, and I casually brought up the fact that I'd noticed her behavior around my boyfriend and that it made me feel uncomfortable. I tried to be calm and non-confrontational, but honestly, I was seething inside. I told her that it felt like she was crossing boundaries and that I didn't like the way she flirted with him or how touchy she got when we were all hanging out. Her response was not great. She immediately got defensive, saying that I was overreacting and reading too much into things. She insisted that she was just being friendly and didn't mean anything by it. When I pressed her on why she was so touchy with him or why she called him babe, she said that it was just a joke and that she wasn't trying to come between us. She also said that I should lighten up and that I was acting insecure, like I couldn't trust my own boyfriend. I don't know what came over me, but I snapped. I told her that if she truly valued our friendship, she would respect my boundaries and back off. I told her that I wasn't comfortable with her behavior anymore, and that I didn't want her acting like she was better for my boyfriend than I was. She started crying, saying that I was accusing her of trying to steal him away from me, which wasn't what I was saying at all. I told her that wasn't the issue, but that she needed to stop treating my relationship like it was a game. After the conversation, she became distant. She hasn't really reached out to me since, and when we do talk, it feels awkward. My boyfriend is also upset with me, saying that I didn't handle the situation well and that I made Maggie feel uncomfortable. He thinks I should have just talked to him about it instead of going straight to Maggie. He said that he doesn't think she was trying to flirt with him or anything, but I feel like I'm in the middle of a situation where my feelings aren't being taken seriously. Now, I'm wondering if I went too far. I didn't want to be a controlling partner, but I also don't think it's okay for her to behave the way she has. I'm stuck between trying to salvage my friendship with Maggie and maintaining my relationship with my boyfriend. I've tried to get advice from other friends, but no one seems to want to pick a side. So, AITA for confronting my best friend about her behavior toward my boyfriend, or should I have just let it go? AITA for refusing to let my brother-in-law bring his dog to my wedding, even though my wife wants him to come. My 32M wife, 30F, Olivia, and I are getting married in a few months. We've been together for almost 7 years and engaged for a little over a year. It's been a bit of a roller coaster with the wedding planning, but overall it's been really exciting. We've agreed on most things, but there's one issue that has been causing tension in the past few weeks, and it's starting to drive me nuts. Olivia's brother, Ethan, 29M, has a dog named Max who he is obsessed with. I mean obsessed. Ethan and Max are basically inseparable. He brings Max everywhere, to family gatherings, to the grocery store. We live in a dog-friendly town, and even on weekend trips. I get it. People love their pets, and I respect that. But this is where things get tricky. Ethan wants to bring Max to our wedding. We are having a fairly traditional wedding, and we've rented out a venue that has a strict no-pet policy unless they're service animals. The venue is also quite small, so I'm already worried about space and the flow of the event. When Ethan asked if he could bring Max, I said no. I explained that the venue doesn't allow pets and that it would be too much of a hassle to make an exception for just one guest. Plus, the wedding is already going to be a tight squeeze as it is, and I wasn't sure how people would feel about a dog running around during the ceremony or reception. Olivia was initially on my side, but then she started talking to her family about it. Olivia's parents adore Max, and so do a lot of other family members. I think it's partly because they think of Max like a child, since Ethan doesn't have any kids. Olivia also grew up with a family dog, so she's always been very fond of them. As a result, she started pushing back on my decision, saying that it's not a big deal if Ethan brings Max along and that he's family. She says that it will make Ethan feel left out and that it'll make things less awkward if we just let him bring the dog. The problem is, I feel like I'm compromising on so many things for this wedding already. We had to cut the guest list down because of budget and space, and now we're trying to fit in people we barely know like distant cousins and coworkers just to keep the peace. The last thing I want to do is make a special exception for Ethan's dog. I'm already stressed about the number of guests, the logistics of the ceremony, the food, and the seating arrangements. I don't want to have to worry about a dog running around or people coming up to me asking about the dog during what should be one of the most important days of my life. I tried explaining this to Olivia. I told her that I didn't want to be a stickler, but I felt like we needed to stick to the rules and that it wasn't reasonable to make an exception for just one person. She said I was being inflexible and that it's not about the dog. It's about Ethan feeling comfortable. She also said that I was being too hard on her family and that I shouldn't ruin their joy for the sake of a silly rule. The more we talk about it, the more I feel like I'm being painted as the bad guy. Olivia keeps saying that I'm making her feel selfish for wanting to accommodate her brother, and that she's not asking for much, just that I be more understanding. I feel like she's turning this into a bigger issue than it needs to be. I tried suggesting that Ethan could find a dog sitter or bring someone along to take care of Max during the wedding, but Olivia wasn't having any of it. She said it's unrealistic to expect Ethan to do that since he can't be away from Max for too long, and that it would just cause him unnecessary stress. At this point, I'm genuinely frustrated. I don't want to ruin the relationship with my in-laws, but I also don't think it's fair to make an exception for one person, especially when it could complicate things for the rest of the guests. I feel like I've been very reasonable in sticking to the venue's rules, and I don't think I should have to justify my decision any more than I already have. I've been doing everything I can to make this wedding perfect for Olivia, but I'm starting to feel like my wishes aren't being taken into account at all. I'm even starting to wonder if she's more concerned about her brother's comfort than mine, which is frustrating. I don't want to be the kind of guy who ruins his own wedding over something trivial, but at the same time, I don't want to start off my marriage by giving in to every request just to keep the peace. I'm genuinely torn here. AITA for saying no to letting Ethan bring Max to the wedding? Should I just cave and let the dog come? Or Am I right to stick to my guns? AITA for kicking my best friend out of my wedding after she ruined my dress? So, I, 28F, am getting married next month to my fiancé, Jake, 30M, and it's been a bit of a roller coaster planning everything. The wedding is small, about 50 guests, and we've been putting a lot of effort into making it meaningful to us, with a few traditions mixed in. One of the most important things to me was my wedding dress. My dress is something I've dreamed about since I was little. It's a custom design from a local boutique, and it's made of this beautiful silk material with intricate lace details. I was lucky enough to be able to afford it, and I felt like it was the perfect fit for me. I've been so excited to wear it and show it off to everyone at the wedding. Now, to give some background, my best friend, Lily, 29F, and I have been inseparable since college. We've always been super close. I trust her with everything, big life decisions, personal stuff, the works. I was so happy to have her as one of my bridesmaids. She was one of the first people I picked for that role because of how important she is to me. So this past weekend, we had a little pre-wedding event. It was a small get-together with the bridal party and some close family, just to kind of get everyone excited and to do a little dress reveal. My mom, sisters, and a few other friends were there, and we were all chatting, having some snacks, and of course, I was eager to show off the dress. I went into the living room where everyone was gathered, and the reaction was mostly great. Lots of compliments. Everyone was saying how beautiful I looked, and I was just feeling like $1,000,000. But then, I noticed Lily was a bit quieter than usual. She was standing at the back of the group, staring at my dress. At first, I didn't think much of it, but then she started asking if she could see the dress up close. I didn't think there was anything wrong with that, so I said sure and started walking toward her. This is where things went south. Lily reached out to touch the fabric of the dress, and without any warning, she grabbed a handful of it and tugged it a little too hard. I'm not sure what she was trying to do. Maybe get a better look at the lace, maybe make some weird joke, but she ended up pulling on the hem so roughly that she tore a tiny bit of the fabric. It wasn't a huge tear, but it was enough for me to see it, and I felt my stomach drop immediately. I was so stunned, I didn't even know what to say at first. Everyone went quiet when they saw what happened. Lily immediately started apologizing, but she wasn't really making sense. She kept saying she didn't mean to, and that it was an accident, and she didn't understand why I was so upset. But honestly, I was furious. That dress wasn't just any dress. It was something I dreamed about for years, and she just ruined it. I didn't care that it was a small tear. It was the principle of it. She had no business handling my dress that way, especially with no warning. I told her that I needed her to leave. I asked her to leave the event, and I wasn't going to tolerate this. She tried to argue that I was overreacting, but I wasn't having it. I was done. I told her that if she couldn't respect my wedding and my dress, I didn't want her there anymore. She left, and the whole day was pretty much ruined after that. I didn't enjoy the rest of the event, and I could barely focus on anything. A few of the bridesmaids tried to calm me down, but I just felt betrayed. My fiancé Jake was really supportive, but he was also upset with how things went down. He thought I had every right to be upset, and that Lily needed to take accountability. The problem is that I've been getting a lot of mixed reactions from other people in my life. Some of my friends, especially the ones who have been in weddings before, told me I was totally justified in kicking her out. They said that weddings are stressful enough, and my best friend should have been more careful. Others, though, think I went too far. They've been telling me that I should have given her a chance to make it right, or at least not kicked her out of the event entirely. Lily has since reached out to apologize again, but I haven't responded yet. I just don't know what to say to her. I feel like what she did was such a huge violation of my trust, and I don't know if I can ever look at her the same way again. I've been leaning toward asking her not to be in the wedding anymore, but I'm afraid it might be too late to make that change, and I don't want to cause a bigger rift in the group. So, AITA for kicking my best friend out of my wedding after she ruined my dress? I'm starting to second guess myself, and I don't know if I'm overreacting. Help me out.